Siege has had some extremely influential updates over the years of it being out, many of which do so via their addition of new operators and other forms of content. However, there are a few examples of seasons that stood out from the rest. These seasons made sweeping changes that would alter everything about Siege forever. And with Year 9's last season coming out shortly, I figured now would be the perfect time to go back and look at some of these seasons and show off the biggest updates that changed Siege forever. The first example of one of these game-changing seasons was Operation Health. Now, Operation Health came out at an interesting time. There was a ton of issues in Year 1 and Year 2. The game was extremely buggy. Hit registration was questionable, servers were crashing, and the game could just break at any point. All of this was being caused by the Ubisoft developer team kind of rushing the game out 2 years back. They had been working with spaghetti code and a broken engine ever since then, and it made adding new content or fixing bugs extremely difficult. Due to all these issues with the game, Ubisoft decided to delay planned new content for Year 2 Season 2, which was Zofia, Ella, and a new map that was eventually scrapped. The content would then be spread out amongst the following seasons of the year. In place of Year 2 Season 2, Ubisoft decided to aim their dev resources for this season towards fixing a lot of issues with the game, as well as adding more quality of life changes to make the game up to speed to other shooters in its class. Some of these quality of life changes included one-step matchmaking, better, more upgraded servers, and the only piece of new content, alpha packs, which have become a staple of the game throughout the years. Now, all of this sounds amazing, and I'm sure many of you are saying that Ubisoft should do this again. However, the season wasn't received as well as many of you might believe. You see, the biggest thing that Operation Health brought to the table was improvements to the game's backend. They were fixing the spaghetti code and making changes to the engine to streamline future development. This meant that they were able to implement changes that allowed them to be more prepared and ready to release content faster, and to better test content before it was released. It also allowed them to catch up on a lot of bugs caused by the spaghetti code the game was built on. Because of this season's huge emphasis on fixing the backend, much of the player base hated the season since its contributions weren't noticeable to anyone except the developers. To many, they saw the game had gotten no content, and then they noticed bugs were still happening in their lobbies, and it angered them. Also, it didn't help that the communication around Operation Health was suboptimal at best. Ubisoft advertised this season as being the ultimate bug fix. They were going to fix all the community's biggest issues, and the game was finally going to be bug-free. However, this season was actually meant to allow the developers to optimize the game's code to make adding new content and patching issues much easier. Due to this disconnect, when Operation Health started introducing more bugs instead of fixing them, it immediately began being memed on by the community. And due to the season's infamous bugginess and glaring issues, it made Ubisoft look pretty incompetent. A lot of players never looked at UB the same after this season, and the community's perception of them as the clumsy, unintelligent developer would be perpetuated due to this issue. However, looking back in hindsight, this season was arguably one of Siege's most important seasons, whether the community realized it or not. Without it, today's Siege wouldn't be possible. Ubisoft likely would have had a much harder time adding new content, patching bugs, server problems likely would have been even worse and more rampant as seasons went on. Not to mention the fact that we'd be dealing with the old archaic matchmaking system of the time. Now, after Operation Health, the next season that I think you have to discuss when thinking about this topic is Operation Shadow Legacy. What makes Shadow Legacy special compared to other seasons is the kind of content Ubisoft decided to add in this season. Instead of adding the usual 2 new operators and a new map, Ubisoft decided to release 1 new operator and focus on adding a ton of quality of life changes, balancing changes, and new base game content that changed the game's meta entirely. One of the biggest examples of this is the variety of new weapon sights like the 2x, 3x, and the 1.5. These sights would dominate, and the 1.5 specifically would become a huge balancing problem for Ubisoft because the sight would boost the pick rate and win rate of whatever operator it was on. This is why today Ubisoft has removed the 1.5 and the 2-time. They were just way too strong to stay in the game. However, there are other features of this season that are still in effect today. The addition of the secondary heart breach gadget started a trend of new secondary gadget selection becoming more important for an operator's effectiveness. The new Ping 2.0 system allowed for players to wallbang opponents way more consistently and to pull off nitro cell kills as well that were not possible before. The removal of vote to kick removed a lot of annoyance and toxicity. Thatcher's rework made EMPs way more fair to go against. The introduction of map bans to ranked would massively influence what maps you'd play on the most, and it would become a major talking point in the community. And the Chalet rework was obviously important because it took one of the game's weaker maps and made it one of the best and most popular maps in the game. The sheer amount of changes in this update was honestly unprecedented, and it was praised by fans for that reason. This is arguably the best update in Siege history from strictly a content basis. The season was just impeccable overall, but it did introduce some concerning patterns that would result in a lot of modern Siege's problems, like the 1.5 that I mentioned earlier, seasons only releasing with 1 operator, and secondary gadgets becoming a dominant force. I have an entire video around the latter topic if you want to see the story in detail, but this season was definitely influential, and it would alter the way we played the game forever. Whether this was for the best best or not is up to your own interpretation, but it was still game-changing nonetheless. Now, the final season I want to discuss in this video is one that I'm sure many of you were expecting, and that is Operation Solar Raid. This season was packed to the brim with content, which is good. However, a lot of the content would be extremely dangerous for the game's future. This season's operator was Solace, an operator that has recently been nerfed to the ground by Ubisoft because of how strong they were in the past. Solace was likely the most influential and effective operator in the meta of the time because of her ability to dominate on a roam. That was because her gadget was basically just IQ on the defense. This made it possible for her to keep track of who, what, and where the attackers were droning. She could see when the attackers were using their gadgets, and she could run out and flank attackers based on the information. Due to her existence, droning immediately became 10 times more difficult for the attackers because it was a risk every time you used your electronics when a Solace was on the board. And with the sheer amount of intel she provided, it incentivized both the defense and the offense to play aggressively to take advantage of or avoid her intel. She was the foundation of the meta at the time, and that's why Ubisoft took a strong stance against her in recent updates. Now, while Solace did have a major influence on the game, the main reason we're discussing Solar Raid in this video is because of the addition of Rank 2.0. Rank 2.0 completely changed the ranked mode forever and for the worst. The reason this had such a bad effect is partially psychological. After the addition of the season, ranks didn't mean as much due to them no longer being a matchmaking tool, and ranked kind of turned into a battle pass of sorts, where the more you played, the higher rank you could achieve, and all your rank really meant was how much you played the season. Also, the fact that losing games had little effect on your RP, since you only lost like 10 RP at the start of the season, many players didn't care about losing, causing everyone to get more aggressive than ever before. This isn't just something that affects Siege's history books. Many players still have no idea today how Ranked 2.0 works, and it leads to frustration and the feeling that Ranked 2.0 is less competitive. This is because players will see a champion in a lobby with 3 coppers and a gold and immediately write off these matches as being unfair. And this is entirely Ubisoft's fault due to their failure to communicate the system properly. But even if they did, this rank system is still way too complicated for no reason, and its issues still persuade large portions of the player base to play more aggressively than they would otherwise. Also, there's a lot of inexperienced players that have likely quit because of Rank 2.0 because they feel like they're getting unfair matches due to the rank disparity. So the operator this season and the ranked rework promoted an aggressive, less utility-oriented playstyle, which still affects us today. Even though the operator has been nerfed, and even though Ubisoft has made efforts to explain Rank 2.0 to a deeper degree, it still doesn't change the fact that ever since Solar Raid and even a few seasons before, we have been dealing with an extreme lack of utility-oriented gameplay in Siege. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's blast to the past showing off the updates that changed Rainbow Six Siege forever. If you did, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. Also, if you think I missed an update in this video, make sure to leave it in the comments down below. Now, if you want to watch another video just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll all enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.